good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. My name is Rajat Sadana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. Supporting me in this webinar, I have Sandeep. Sandeep is a GMAT strategy expert at e-GMAT, and he's going to make sure that as we go through this webinar, if you have any GMAT-related questions, they get answered. This is an RC strategy focused webinar. And in this webinar, we're going to look at how should you approach GMAT reading comprehension and what are the key traits of a student who actually aces GMAT reading comprehension. And acing for us at e-GMAT is getting to that 90th percentile or higher. We're going to solve 2 short passages and 1 long passage in this entire webinar. The focus is not on solving questions. The focus is on the approach towards reading a passage such that solving questions becomes a cakewalk, which is what we're going to focus on over here. Now, in GMAT reading comprehension, you have very few tricks or very few concepts. I shouldn't say tricks over here. We don't use the word tricks at e-GMAT. Very few concepts. There are essentially 2 concepts that the entire section evaluates you on. One is on the concept of main point. The second is on the concept of inference. And to make sure that you're well prepared to absorb those reading strategies, we did send these 2 video lessons your way. They are on main point. These video lessons teach you how to go about getting to the main point. They also have exercises in them. If you've not gone through these video lessons, they are a part of your free trial. Log in and you'll be able to get to it. With that, we have some upcoming free webinars. So tomorrow we have a quant workshop. In this, think of it as a proctored mock test. We evaluate your quant ability, then we give you insights on the areas that are your strengths and the areas that you need to work on. And then we help you build your own study plan. We also tell you about certain behaviors that you may be lacking on. So that's a day from now, or 24 hours from now. And then next week, we have a critical reasoning webinar in which we're going to talk about how can you tackle 700 level CR questions, more specifically questions related to assumptions with ease. Very similar to today's webinar, we're going to look at the approach towards tackling assumption questions, and we're going to focus on this method called pre-thinking. It's a method that we pioneered about 10 years ago, and we've constantly refined that method over about 3 iterations. Okay, with that, let me go right into the webinar pane. And as I do that, the screen will change for you. So I'm going to mute myself for about 15 seconds to allow the screen. Sorry about that. One other question that we like to ask is, what is your target GMAT score? And have about 330 students in the webinar. Let's get about 200 inputs on this question. Actually, I already have 200 inputs. That's good. So when I look at 710 onwards, that's about 22%. That's about 90% of this class, or 88% to be more precise, over here. So that's great. But 20% if you're aiming for that 760 plus. I love that. Let me hide this. So round 1 of 20, which is the September round, is going to be, or is projected to be, one of the most competitive rounds in the last 6 to 8 years when it comes to people going in for the GMAT. Just because, I mean, if you think about what schools are preparing for, Harvard, for example, is expanding its class size for the 2021 intake, which means if you're applying in September for the following fall, it expects more people to apply, and consequently is putting in more resources to accommodate, to admit more people overall. So one of the things that's really important when something like this happens, especially in light of the COVID-19 crisis, is that you position yourself the best. And if you look at the trend with regards to GMAT scores at top B schools, it has been going up. So if you're aiming to get into a top B school, aim for a score of 730 plus. Why? Because of these three reasons. One is, even prior to the COVID-19 crisis, B schools required that score of 730, especially the top 20 odd schools. The second, scholarships, and yet B schools are giving a ton of scholarship money. In fact, in addition to that, they're also offering very favorable loans to students. And a good chunk of that money goes to people who get to that 730 plus score based on the data that we have. And the delta, and the third reason, which is probably the most important reason, is when you look at the delta in total earnings over a 10-year period, it's the highest that it has ever been. When I say delta, the earnings of students who graduate from a tier 1 school versus those who graduate from a tier 2 school. I'm going to quickly run through some data to prove these three things. Okay. Here's how the median GMAT scores have trended at top B schools between 2014 and 2018. The two things that you'd observe over here. One is no Harvard, no Stanford here. Why? Because even in 2014, they were already there at 730. When you look at this trend for 23 out of top 25 schools, this trend has been increasing. The second thing which is there is that when you think about certain schools that give out more stars, such as MIT, Sloan, and Columbia, over 80% of the admitted class has scores of 700 or higher. So essentially what these schools are saying is, if you don't have a score of 730 or 700, don't even bother applying. And this is despite this thing. And this is really important. So from 2014 to 2018, there was a 15% decline in applications to B schools. Yet the GMAT scores went up. Yet the median salaries went up. In 3 months, we expect to see a huge increase in the application. So you can really see this trend kind of going forward in the same direction. And again, because this goes for top schools, the tier 2 schools or schools ranked 25th to 50, they follow course, and you can really see the black dots are schools that are typically considered as tier 2 schools, and you can see the median GMAT score increases over there. And we do continue to expect this to happen in 3 months as well. And just how important is that GMAT score? Let's kind of look at some anecdotal data. So Nishant, who by the way is one of our former students, he's going to be talking about his MBA journey on Monday on our YouTube channel. He scored a 690. He was rejected by Tuck and a bunch of other schools. Scored a 740. He got full rides from Ohio Fisher and bit from Columbia. He's currently studying at Columbia. And in fact, B schools told him the reason they were rejecting him was his GMAT score, not his candidacy in general. Pravi applied to a bunch of schools with a 680, didn't get a single interview invite. Updated that score from 680 to 740, so send the updated score. Got 4 interview invites within 7 hours. 7 hours. And again, got a bunch of scholarships and fellowships. She's actually just graduating from Kellogg. Krishnakant, again, for him, in round 2, he was rejected by a bunch of schools. Round 3, he updated his GMAT score or enhanced his GMAT score to 720. Got a full ride, not just admits, but got full ride from every school he applied to. Okay. Essentially, when it comes to your GMAT score, it's been getting more important, and in round 1 of next year, I anticipate it to be way more important than it was 12 months back. Okay. The second is scholarship money. When you think about B schools and US-based B schools give out about $350 million worth of scholarship. European B schools give out about $45 to $50 million worth of scholarship money over here. Based on our estimates, e-GMATers get about $30 odd million worth of scholarship every year. But 55% of this money is distributed to those guys who get to a score of 740 or higher, and 80% of it goes to folks who score 710 or higher. Which means if you are applying strategically, if you have a score of 740 or higher, that's kind of the minimum annual scholarship amount that you're likely to get over here. And what does your scholarship or fellowship depend on? 2 things. One is your GMAT score. The second is your likability during the interview. Okay, so and I know this because essentially I had multiple full rides when I applied to B schools. And again, as some anecdotal data, Mansi, who's again a former student, scored 770, got $90,000 worth of scholarship from Harvard. Victor got full ride from Ross and Keenan Flagler, and Kong Bui got not just got a full ride from about 4 schools. He has paid $1,700 a month to study at Ohio Fisher. Again, we already saw this data about Nishant, Pravi, as well as Krishnakant. And again, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can really see a few more of such instances. Here's another example of a student who got a 710, was waitlisted by Ross in Columbia, reached out to the B school, and B school told him, so folks at Ross told him, hey, you need to increase your GMAT score. Didn't even apply again. Within a month or so, he increased his GMAT score to 750. The same schools that waitlisted him now gave him scholarships. Again, on Monday, you'd see him interviewing Nishant. Okay, and you can register on, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel to see hundreds and hundreds of such success stories. And there's a quote from John Fuller, who's the former admissions director at Ross. He says, hey, if you have a 770, way more likely to get a fellowship or a scholarship. Why? Because the B school wants to buy that GMAT score. The third reason, the delta in total earnings, that's the highest that it has ever been over here. So I'm going to compare two schools, Babson and MIT. Both these schools are in Boston. Boston is a reasonable place to live, not super high costs of living like such as those in New York or San Francisco. So and these two schools are 20 miles apart. So arguably, students who study at Babson and those who study at MIT have access to similar sort of local opportunities. When you look at their median base salaries, they differ by about 40,000. You know, look at their average bonus, that differs by about 20 grand over here. Same geography, by the way, 20 miles apart. And the total first year compensation, the delta is about $60,000. Now, the thing which is there is, I'm a Babson grad, and when I studied at Babson, this delta was about $20,000. So the delta, that's about $60,000. This was $20,000. So what has happened over the last 12 years, I graduated 12 years ago, is that companies have regarded top B schools, graduates from top B schools, to be a lot more qualified to make more money. And hence the value of a tier 1 MBA has gone up. Okay. So again, if you consider that delta on an annual basis to be about $45,000 because you don't get a bonus every year, it's about $450K for about 10 years. Okay. So 3 reasons, there's 30 points, could be worth $500,000. I'm going to take one question. It's a really great question. So Ashwin says, the presenter is saying, Ashwin, my name is Rajat, by the way, and great question. The number of applications is going to increase despite the COVID-19 crisis. I'm not saying despite, I'm saying because of the COVID-19 crisis. So there's a causality there. But again, great point. The number of jobs going down, so this conclusion is based upon what? That's a great question. I'm going to briefly delve upon it, and if you guys need more detail towards the end, we'll talk about it. So a lot of people ask me, about 2 years ago, with technology becoming so important, is the role of a manager even relevant? And what technology brings about is change. My response to that is, and this is what the data is telling us, the role of a manager, the role of a leader has become way more important today than what it was before. Why? Because one thing that technology does is it brings about change. And one thing that a leader does is transition change. Now, what has happened with the COVID-19 crisis? The COVID-19 crisis that has brought about a ton of change. And it's because of that change, the jobs at the lower level, they're getting cut. But the jobs that kind of bring about change, those are the jobs that are going up. It's if you think about the history of human development, you look at what automation did, what actually industrialization did, it created a higher number of high value jobs, but it also destroyed a lot of lower value jobs. And that MBA is that higher value job. So Ashwin, does that make sense? If you think about what's happening in your companies, a lot of people who go about bringing change or change processes, they're not being fired. People who are being fired are people who are at the grassroots. And for those of you who think it's hard work to crack the exam with the whiteboard, we have a YouTube channel dedicated just to the whiteboard. You can really see how simple it is. You have to use the right whiteboard. You have to have it integrated within the app to do this. So for me, when I think about the whiteboard and the GMAT, I think the whiteboard is a huge boon on the verbal section. For 85% of quant questions, it works perfectly well. It's only 15% of quant questions where you have to adapt yourself. And if you want to see more evidence of it, we have 10 questions solved using the whiteboard on our YouTube channel. You can really see how simple it is. All right, with that, let's go into your RC session. So if you want to get to that 730 score, aim for a 90th percentile RC ability. And if you need help with aiming for that 90th percentile RC ability, and if you need help devising your study plan, we can definitely help you get there. Okay. And to figure out how to build that study plan, let me share a link with you. So here is the link if you want to build your study plan. So let's talk about your RC approach now. I'm going to share a short answer pod over here, and I want you to tell me about your RC approach. We clear all answers. Yes. How do you approach an RC passage? And again, and on the pod on the right hand side, please put your answers in there. Now, I'm not sharing those or broadcasting those answers, so you can't see whether your response has been put in there, but it is coming in. I have about 12 responses, about 20 responses, as I say. Out of 400 odd students in the webinar, I'd like to get about 70 to 80 responses. 34 responses. 46 responses. 54. Good. I'm going to start broadcasting results so that you can really see while responses come in. Okay, I love the response that says focus on 7 key reading strategies. I love the response of reading and summarizing. Read the text and try to answer the questions. Read each paragraph and summarize the main point. Go through the passage, underline the text. Okay, that's good. Some of you are really saying that you just skim through the passage, focus on reading the questions first. Some of you, so the two schools of thought here. One is focus on understanding the passage and then go to the questions. The second is focus on reading the questions and essentially skimming the passage overall. All right, that is good. Now, this next question that I have for you is, and this is a really important question because I would want you to tell me if you think otherwise now. So the next question is, what is the level of understanding that you have of the passage before you start answering questions? Does this essentially define your strategy? Okay, let's get a few more responses. Let me broadcast results. So about 15 of you, about 6% of you are in that complete understanding. Uh, the biggest or two big groups, 75 to 90, 37%, 50 to 75, 46%, and less than 50%, they're there. So just if you have a pen and paper, or I should say now if you have a whiteboard, just write down the option that you chose, because I want you to come back and I want you to answer this question again after we do our first example. Okay. So what am I going to talk about in this session? So my goal again is to make sure that I give you the tools to that so that each one of you can ace reading comprehension. Now I'm going to focus on three things. One is, how do you get the maximum from the passage? That's kind of going to be 60% of my focus. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to dispel that myth that if you want to ace GMAT RC, you need to be a voracious reader. I'm going to rather put this belief in you that if you want to ace GMAT RC, you need to be a willing student. If you're a willing student, if you have the right attitude towards GMAT RC, you can ace GMAT RC. Okay. Then I'm also going to give you tools, which are the reading strategies, and I'm going to demonstrate these tools through small passages and then a full length passage. Okay. Now, how are we going to use this tool? We're going to use these tools by first demonstrating them on a main point question, on a very small passage, then on an inference question. As you do this, and then this is something we've done, we've held this session multiple times. So based on historical data, a lot of people get a much better idea on what a main point question is about and what an inference question is about. And then we're going to apply the same strategies on one single length RC passage over there. Now, this is what we're going to do. Our goal here is not to solve 10 different passages, but to solve one passage properly, but to make sure that you realize what it takes to ace a GMAT RC, and make sure that we actually start inculcating those good habits in our daily reading, in our daily RC, and actually our daily SC and CR as well. So that's what this session is about, inculcating those good habits or those right habits. Okay. Starting with that attitude, and overall, the goal is to also give you a study plan or a journey towards that 90th percentile when it comes to RC. But that study plan is nothing but that journey. Okay. The first thing that it starts with is an attitude. So many a times you people hate GMAT RC. Why? Because they say that I'm not interested in the topic that's there in the passage. I don't care about it. I've never read about it. And that, in my opinion, is the wrong attitude. The way you've got to really go about doing RC is to get immersed in the passage. That's something that's really important. When you get immersed in the passage, you tell yourself that, hey, whatever the author is saying, I'm really interested in that particular topic. So that disinterest part, throw that away. That's the first attitude that I want you to get. The second thing that I want you to do is to visualize the passage with the same intent that the author has written in the passage with. So overall, step one, become an active reader. Approach the passage with an attitude that you're going to get immersed in the passage. Acing RC is a game of mental attitude. Tell yourself, while taking the GMAT, this passage is key to 4 correct answers. This passage is key to $20,000 to $30,000 worth of scholarship money. When you tell yourself, you will, by default, start to get immersed in the passage, despite the topic that's there. And if you get immersed in the passage, then we're going to talk about how can you visualize the passage from an author's viewpoint or an author's intent as you read it. And we're going to do that using examples. The second thing that we want you to do is focus on reading strategies, and we're going to talk about three strategies uh, uh, in this session. One is to understand while you're reading a passage, as you're reading each sentence, understand how that sentence is constructed, and then infer or extract the meaning from it. The second is predict what the author is going to really be saying. Why? Because the GMAT RC reading comprehension passages are written very carefully. Every word is there for a purpose. Understand the purpose, and the words where you can easily predict the purpose or infer the purpose are keywords. So you can predict the author's thoughts through keywords, and then you want to make sure that you prevent information overload. And to do that, as you're reading a certain amount of text and you feel that there's been an information overload, you actually summarize and predict. Take a pause. Now, just at a very high level, when you think about these three reading strategies and the whiteboard being there, you can really see the on-screen whiteboard could be a huge boon over here. Why? Because you can read and you can summarize in parallel, especially with a whiteboard that you can resize, and that is there right on the screen, not as a pop-up, not as a separate tab. Okay. Do you have time to do that? Absolutely. Absolutely. We wouldn't have 10 times as many reviews as any other prep company in the recent past if this weren't the case. Absolutely. All right. With that, the key to acing GMAT RC is to read slowly. And by reading slowly, you improve comprehension. All right. So I'm going to give you this one passage. I'm going to give you about 1 minute to read this passage. I'm going to put in a poll question, which is a simple yes no poll question. I want you to tell me whether you're done reading the passage. This is just the passage. We won't have any poll questions over here. Here is the passage. Tell me when you're done reading the passage. I'm going to mute myself during this time. Perfect. 99% of you are done reading the passage. That is wonderful. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 4 questions, and or I'm going to give you a question, and I want you to tell me what the correct answer is. All right. Sorry, for some reason my poll question didn't come through. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay. Now this one has 5 answer choices, but let's just worry about getting the first 4. Actually, you know what? Let's get your summary first before we get there. Let's get the summary first. I'm going to clear your responses. Why don't you write down your summary as to what did you summarize, and and then I'm going to share the questions. Just write in the brief summary. What did you? Because it'll be really good insights as to. Let's see a few more summaries. I want to get about 25 summaries. 34 summaries, and I'm going to broadcast these results, and you can really see what they are, and then we're going to come back to this over here. Now here's the first question, and I want you to select still solving so that I know how many people are still solving. That way I won't time you. So select still solving, and let's get about 100 people saying still solving. And now here is the question that you for you. Again, remember, it has only 4 choices, so don't choose choice. All right, 80% of you are done. Let's get those responses in. Okay. 3, 2, and 1. And we'll discuss this question. That's the whole goal. Let me end the poll. Let me broadcast the results. So you can see, choice D is the most popular choice. Twice as many people have chosen choice D as have chosen any other choice. But despite that, it's only 43%. Now, let's look at this over here. And in the context, what I also want to do now before I go into the explanation is to show you the summaries that you guys have said. And I want you to focus on folks who are saying differentiation between in-group and out-group, those who are saying defining ethnocentrism, those who are saying author tells about ethnocentrism and involves in-group and how it involves in-group, out-group differentiation, and so on and so forth. And the reason why these summaries, and notice understanding the difference between these summaries is really important, is because when you summarize something, you build an understanding. And if you build the wrong understanding, you make a mistake. So you know what you put in, keep that in mind, and let's see what is the author trying to say. And again, as I said earlier, 1, get immersed in the passage. 2, read the passage from the point of view of the author. So let's get there. I'm going to bring in my short answer poll question here once again. So let's start reading the passage from the point of view of the author, bordering on one extreme, and I'm going to underline that. So when I see this bordering on one extreme, all right, the author is saying that. What is the author saying? He says, hey, there's one extreme definition of ethnocentrism. It's an exaggerated definition. And I see bordering on one extreme, what goes on, what I visualize in my mind is an exaggeration, because that's what bordering on one extreme really says. Then he says one definition of ethnocentrism. So when I read this part, what I get is it's not the author's definition, it's not the ultimate definition, it's one of the possible definitions of ethnocentrism. Okay, considers it XYZ. Now, how many of you, when you read just this part, inferred these two things? Just yes, no. How many of you, when you did this yourself, inferred that bordering on extreme means it's an exaggerated definition, and then it's one other definition that's not something that the author may believe in? How many of you did that? And you can really see 50% of it, you did it, half of you did not do it, and which is where, you probably lost this question. All right. And that's where, when I say read the passage from the point of view of the author, that is the point of view of the author over there. Okay. So take a feedback. Write this down. I'm going to read the passage from the point of view of the author. All right. Let's move forward. One definition of EC, and always shorten this. We don't care about ethnocentrism or centrism. I call it EC. Considers it a schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation. How many of you were scared when you saw this word schismatic and said, man, I don't understand what schismatic means? Let me just reopen the yes no poll. How many of you were scared? Okay, but 72% of you were scared. To be fearful is okay, but always trust the test maker. On GMAT reading comprehension, if you see a super complex word, most likely, A, it may not have a huge impact, it may not be tested, or B, you'd be able to infer its meaning. GMAT RC is, unlike the GRE, is not a test of your vocab. Okay, so if you see a difficult word, it's probably irrelevant, either irrelevant or you can infer its meaning. Schismatic, let's continue reading. Schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation. What kind of differentiation? In which, again, this is where your sentence structure comes in, really important. Those of you, how many of you over here who are e-GMAT students have gone through the Master Comprehension course? How many of you who are e-GMAT students have gone through the Master Comprehension course? Okay, but 30% of you have. I think the others are not e-GMAT students probably. When you say in which over here, you're talking about that in-group, out-group differentiation, and the MC course teaches you to read it this way. Internal cohesion, blah, 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 are correlated, again, when you focus on this, the set of things that are correlated to the state of hostility towards out-group, which, what does that which refer to? What does that this which refer to? The outgroups, yes, which are often perceived as subhuman and or the incorporation of evil. All right. That is really good. Outgroups, all right. So when I read this, these are my notes. One, the first is there's an exaggerated definition of EC. Okay. And what is EC? Some differentiation in which your own people, the love for your own people is linked with hatred towards the outgroup. So when I summarize this paragraph, I say the author presents one definition of EC. The author then indicates that this definition is a bit exaggerated. And then, per this definition, the following things are correlated. One is love for your own people. The second is hatred for evil. Okay. What does the word correlated mean, guys? What does this word correlated mean? All right, let's get a few more. I have 29. So the three words: coincident, correlated, causal. They are very critical in GMAT verbal. You need to have a really good understanding of these three words. Okay. And I'm going to broadcast the results. And you can see the difference over here. So there's some people who are saying they're proportional. The second who are saying there's a degree of relationship. There's dependency in there. The others are saying causality. A few of you are actually saying proportional to one another. Okay. So and only a couple of these definitions are precise. And this is not important just from a GMAT RC standpoint. It's very important from a critical reasoning standpoint as well. And I'm going to show what those three words are, right? So essentially, when I look at this, I say, hey, in the passage, there's one definition that's given um, over there, and you infer that that's an exaggerated definition, and then you summarize the passage. Now, how many of you were able to extract all three from it, or essentially 1, 2, and 3 select the items that you were not able to understand from the passage? One is present one definition of EC. Second is indicate that definition is exaggerated, and the third is per this definition these three happen. And if you're able to actually infer everything out of the passage, select none. And this is a multiple response question, so if you weren't able to infer one or two, you can choose 1 and 2 both. Okay, but 182 responses, 190 responses, 198, 201, 202, that's perfect. Let me just broadcast the results. And you can really see a lot of people weren't able to infer what does this bordering on one extreme meant. A lot of people weren't able to infer that it's just one definition of EC and not the definition of EC. And the correlation part is also what a significant number of you weren't able to infer. And again, this is where data is beautiful. Why? Because it tells you where you need to work on. 2-line passage, or I'd say 1 long line passage or 2 actual line passage, and still there were things that you missed out on. Now, you guys are talking about what are the 3 words? The 3 words are coincidence, correlation, and causality. What does coincidence mean? Coincidence means that these 2 events, when you say 2 events are coincident, they happen together. They may not be in a direct connection between them. One may not cause the other. Okay, they could, but they could not. It doesn't imply that they do. The word correlated means that they are connected, which means one happens and the other one also happens. Okay, now do they have to happen together? No. Does one cause the other? Not necessarily. A third thing could be causing both of them, but essentially one happens and there's a connection with it, and the other may happen with a delay or may happen at the same time. All right. And when you say causality, again, causality doesn't mean that they happen together. All right. Pressure buildup in the Earth's crust causes volcanoes. Pressure buildup happens before volcanoes happen, or an eruption in a volcano happens, to be more precise. But are they causal? Yes. Are they coincident? No, not really. Pressure buildup can happen for years before the volcano finally erupts. Is there a direct connection? Absolutely. Does one cause lead to the other? Absolutely. Is this distinction helpful? Yes, no? Okay. And again, keep this in mind. That's really important. When it comes to, so when you say they are correlated, it doesn't mean they are proportional. It doesn't mean they are directly proportional. A directly proportional is a very, very strong causality. All right. Directly proportional actually goes even way beyond causality. That's a very, very strong relationship between 2 entities. Yes, coincidence happen together means they happen at the same time. Yes. So co means together, incidence means happening. Okay. So with that, again, remember what we extracted out of this. Now let's look at the questions. The first question says, what is the main purpose of the passage? And the option says to criticize a concept that encourages hostility towards people and not belonging to the same group. Here is how you guys polled. About 21 of you said, yes, the author criticizes the concept. Does the author criticize the concept? Does the author criticize the concept of EC? Yes, no? No, he doesn't say, the EC is bad. He says, this is what EC is. And when the test maker makes this answer choice, that test maker is actually playing with your own personal emotions. All right. And which is why option A is incorrect. Now, Let's look at option B, and I'm going to bring in my short answer pod once again. It says to evaluate the concept of EC and while enlisting its various features. The word evaluate means that it talks about the benefits of EC and the downsides of EC. That's what evaluate means. Does the author talk about benefits of EC on the society or the downsides of EC? No, he doesn't. So he can't be evaluating the concept of EC. And this brings me to another very important thing. When you're reading the answer choice, you should have the skill of understanding what the answer choice is already saying. So the moment, or visualizing what the answer choice is saying. So the moment you see evaluate, benefits and downsides should start to pop in your head automatically. When that happens, that's when you save time. That's when you are deliberate towards your decision making. That's when you reject this answer choice in right away. Nana Patnik says, but first of all, Nana Patnik, my name is Rajat. So he says extreme. He says bordering on an extreme, one definition. So let me bring in the notes over here. He says one bordering on an extreme, one definition. So he's the extreme part is for the definition, not ethnocentrism. Nana Patnik, does that tell you? He's not criticizing EC. He's criticizing that definition. And that's where the master comprehension course is really important. But great question. Let's look at choice C. Choice C says to define the concept of ethnocentrism. And again, remember, choice B, 24% of you chose. Choice C, 23% of you chose. To define the concept of ethnocentrism, which leads to hierarchy among social groups. First of all, the author doesn't define the concept of ethnocentrism. Okay. The author presents a concept of EC. All right. And then this doesn't lead to hierarchy. The author doesn't talk about hierarchy among subgroups. So because this is wrong, this is wrong, this particular answer choice is wrong as well. And it's really important to understand this. The definition that's presented is not the author's definition. He says one definition. So when we talk about the concept of ethnocentrism, what the answer choice is saying is that it's the author's definition. Okay. And Preeti, thank you. She says it leads to a clear divide and not a hierarchy. That's great. That's very well. Okay. Choice D, which is our correct answer, says to introduce. Yes, the author introduces us to EC, and he also presents a view on it. What is the view that the author presents? It's an extreme, one view. All right. So this one is our correct correct answer. Why? Because he presents our view and he presents our definition of EC. Okay. All right, let's kind of look at some questions. Now, this is great. Let me just bring in the content over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the passage and then let's answer those questions. So you have the passage in front of you. Just give me 1 second, guys. I have to bring in, just bear with me because I want to address the questions that you have. And I don't want to go back on the slides. All right, I now have the passage with me. Let's get our notes over here. Here is the passage. Let me just increase the font. And again, those questions tell me where you guys are faltering. So let's look at this. Please explain the view part. Let's talk about introducing the concept of ethnocentrism. When the author says bordering on the extreme, one definition considers, is the author introducing the concept of ethnocentrism when he gives you one definition of ethnocentrism? Yay or nay? He is, right? He gives you a definition. He gives you an introduction to what some people think ethnocentrism is. So he introduces the concept of ethnocentrism to you. All right? All right. Then he also says that this definition is extreme. All right. So this is one extreme way of looking at EC. He also presents a view on it. Right. This is EC, but this is an extreme view. So there's an author's view on it. Okay. He says here's a concept of EC. Okay, bordering on one extreme, one definition. So the one definition piece over here gives you an introduction, and then bordering on the extreme gives you the author's view on that. All right. Okay. Now, this part over here, he calls its definition extreme. Yes, he introduces you to the concept by presenting a definition. Prior to this, did you know what EC was? Prior to reading this passage, did you know what EC was? Yes or no? No, you didn't know. But now after reading this passage, you know what EC is. So there you've been introduced to it. Okay. So no, not a view on ethnocentrism. No, it's a view on that definition. Yes, but not a view on ethnocentrism. Agreed. Okay, let's do one more question over here. All right, question 2, we're going to go through the same process. I want you, and this is going to become a lot more clear with question 2. I want you to select yes once you've read the passage over here. I want you to select yes over here. Don't need to select no, by the way. Just select yes once you've read the passage. Right, pretty much everyone's done reading the passage. So I want you to select again the correct answer. And here are the answer choices. Again, there's an option E over here. All right, guys, let's get those answers in. I have 200 responses there already. Last 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And this is a single response question, not a multiple response question. Let me end the poll. I have 209 responses and broadcast the results. So what you really see is choice A is popular, choice B is popular, as is choice E. Let's kind of look at it. And this is, you did not need to keep the prior passage or the prior paragraph take the prior paragraph into account. There was no need. This is an independent question. And this is where we kind of take visualizing the passage and reading the passage from an author standpoint to that next level, which is going to be really useful as we start, as we go into the full-length passage. All right. So with that, let's kind of do this. And before we do this, in the prior passage, we understood what correlation, coincidence, and causality was. Here, we're going to understand what inference is. So if, as an author, if I say the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect, then which of these statements would you agree with? And I'm going to give you the options over here. Sorry about this. Just choose either A or B. Which of the statements would you agree with? A for 1, B for 2. If I say this statement, the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on moods of people, which statement can you infer from the above? Let's get a few more responses. I have close to 200 responses. That is good. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Broadcast the results. 71% of you say it's A, that some people regard the color blue as soothing, and you guys would be correct. That is correct. When you say the color blue is soothing, you can't infer that. Why? Because the author is saying the color blue is considered to be, it's considered to have a soothing effect. The author is not saying, I am saying that the color blue has a soothing effect, but some people consider or regard the color blue to have soothing effect. That's the correct option. Why? Because we don't know why, because the author is not telling her telling us if it's his opinion. Is that part absolutely clear? And the reason why I want you to understand this is because in GMAT RC, the inference is always from the point of view of the author, not from someone else's point of view, and which is what this paragraph plays on. When you talk about what can you infer from the statement above, it means what would the author agree with. So inference is always what would the author agree with. And that's really important for you to understand. Okay. How many of you knew this, that inference is what the author would agree with and not what's blindly stated in the passage? How many of you knew this? All right, but half the class knew this. And Preeti, yes. That's absolutely correct. All right. So, but half the class did not know this. You can really see the responses over here. All right, let's move forward because we are now going to increase the pace. So, what do we have over here? EC and its canonical variants are deemed to be. So, when I read something like this, when I see the words are deemed to be, I start visualizing. I say EC and some variations of EC are considered to be intimately connected with XB. Xenophobia is XB. What is XB? A complex attitude, system cum sentiment involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien and everything that the stranger or alien represents. Now, I want you to break the sentence over here. till this point. Let's kind of consider this part to be part A. And this is how, and this part over here, starting from this, to be part B. When you think about when you think about it reading from an author standpoint, what is the difference between part A and part B over here? Not just from a content standpoint, but what it represents. I'm going to put in my short answer pod very quickly, but I'll give you time to think. What's the difference between part A and part B? What's the difference between part A and part B? Part A ends at xenophobia, part B, okay. Part B is a definition. Yes, part B is a statement. Statement by whom? Statement by whom? Okay, that is good. Some of you are getting it. It's a statement. So the difference over here, that's great. When you read part A, what the author does is he presents a view on A is equal to a view presented by the author. Okay, A is equal to a view presented by the author. And let me just put in over here, whereas B is the definition that the author believes in. Read this from that standpoint. Okay, B is a definition that the author believes in. Read it again. You will have to read it again to really see this. The author says EC and its canonical variants are deemed to be connected with XP. What is XP? A complex attitude cum sentiment structure involving blah 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 and blah 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 blah. Can you see the difference over here? Author doesn't own up to A. He says this is someone else's view, but the author owns up to B, and which is very, very important. All right, and this distinction is important because as we do the official passage, you're going to use a very similar structure to arrive at the correct answer. Okay. How many of you did this while you were, or made this distinction while you were reading the passage yourself? You did not. Yes, and that's really important to know. And where do you get this from? You get this from the sentence structure. You get this from reading slowly. If you did not read slowly, or if you rush through this, your mind will not make this distinction. All right. You can say part B is the general definition, or part B is the definition that the author agrees with. All right. Then the next line, some sociocultural anthropologists even consider. So you have to ask yourself, why does the author use the word some sociocultural anthropologists over here? Why does he say some sociocultural anthropologists even consider? Why does he say this part? And why not start the sentence right from here, xenophobia and ethnocentrism, EC? Why? Because he wants to tell you it's not my view. It's the view of some sociocultural anthropologists. Okay, and that distinction is really important. And some of you may be thinking, why the hell do we care about this? How many of you, some of you may be thinking, why do we care about this? So as a manager, one of the things that he would be doing is making reports. Do you guys agree? One of the things that you'd be doing is making reports, right? Or giving recommendations. That's what you see your bosses doing. And in your reports or in your definitions, if you don't make this distinction, which is whether this is your view or someone else's view, you might get fired. And that's where knowing this is really important. That, hey, this is how I present someone else's view. This is how I present my view. Why? Because if you really say someone else's view to be your view, and if that view is absurdly wrong, you might get fired for it. Okay, and that's what GMAT RC tests as one of this. Some socio-control even considered XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin, but a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. So when you look at this, it says he presents viewpoints of two different groups. The author does not belong to either group. He says there's a group of socio-cultural anthropologists that consider XB and EC to be parts of the same, opposite sides of the same coin. But then there's also this other group that have cautioned that that may not be true. All right. So what does the author say? That EC and its variants are closely connected to XP. What is XP? XP is hatred for all aliens. And then he talks about, first of all, the view of some experts who say that, hey, EC and XP coexist. And then he tells us that some other experts disagree, that XP and EC disagree with that view. Okay, so it defines a new term. Some say they're closely connected, and some say they're closely coexist, and some other experts say otherwise. When you look at this summary over here, you can really see, man, there are lots and lots of viewpoints. The only thing that the author believes in is this. So either you can have an inference on this, or you can have an inference that it seems that there is little unified consensus about, hey, XP and EC. That's the only inference that you can draw from this. All right. So what is the correct inference? The correct inference, 3 checklists, is always from the point of view of the author. It's not something that the author hasn't given his opinion on. And the author always agrees with the facts. Why? Because we don't question facts in the context of reading comprehension. In our daily lives, we can question facts, but in the context of reading comprehension, we don't. All right. So let's look at how you guys polled over here. And I'm going to bring in our poll. Very few of you, if I remember correctly, chose choice 2. Let me just bring in, where is my poll question? Here is how you guys polled, if I remember correctly. So choice E was popular, choice A was popular, choice B was very popular as well. Let me just remove this. So xenophobia and EC are different facets of the same concept. Does the author agree with this? Does the author agree with this? We're going to get to the correct answer. Yes, no? No, the author doesn't agree with it. It's someone's opinion. All right. So which is why this is not an inference. Let's look at choice B. Choice B was the most popular. The canonical variants of EC are closely connected with XB. Okay. They are, according to the author, they are not close. They may be, they may not be. The author doesn't agree with us. It's a deemed view. All right. And choice B is wrong as well. 44%, 115 of you chose choice B. All right. Do you guys understand where you made a mistake? All right. Anything with this, it's an inference question. An inference is something that the author agrees with. The author doesn't agree. The author doesn't say in the passage with 100% certainty whether the canonical variants of EC are closely connected. What the author says is EC and its variants are considered to be. When you say they are considered to be, then it means that they may be connected, they might not be connected. I don't have an opinion on it. Okay, if I'm presenting this information to my bosses, I'm presenting this as a fact that they're considered to be. I don't with it. I don't disagree with it. I don't have enough of information to make a judgment on it. And which is why we can't call it an inference. Third choice C, which says X, P, and EC are not connected with each other for the same reason that the prior choice was incorrect. The author doesn't have an opinion either way, whether they're connected or whether they're not, and hence this one is wrong as well. Okay. Choice D says in some cases XB could be the cause of EC. There's no causal relationship that's presented in the passage. Then choice E says xenophobia entails dislike towards the strange. Yes, it does. But why? Because remember, we broke this down over here as part B, and this is what the author's definition is. And this is something that you can infer from the passage. Why? Because the author agrees with this. And that's the definition. That's the only part where the author presents as his view, and which is what makes choice E the correct answer. What did you learn from this? Two-line passage. Opposite sides of the same coin mean they're similar. Easy if you take your time. Read slowly. Learn about what exactly the word inference is. Need to break down the author's point of view. Really, really important. The key thing that I want you to make sure that you do is, as you're reading, internalize the passage, visualize it. And if you're unable to do that, then read slowly. Read this passage as if you are the author. Okay, read this passage as if you are the author. Shashank says, how do we figure out that that's author's view? And he's talking about this piece over here. So Shashank, he's talking about this piece over here. All right. Shashank, what do you do? Do you mind writing down as a profession? What do you do? If you can write it in the short answer pod over here, that would be very nice. You're an engineer. What kind of an engineer are you? A civil engineer. All right. Let me just create a statement, and forgive me if I'm technically incorrect, but I think it'll be enough for me to get my point over here. All right. Synthetic roads are considered to be crack proof. Which means that they can take unbearable roads without breaking down. So this statement over here, which means that they can take unbearable loads without breaking down, whose definition is that part in blue? Whose definition is that part in blue over here? It's the author's definition, you as the author, right? Right? That's you as the author. Now, do you agree 100% that synthetic roads are crack proof? No, you don't. No. No, you don't. But yes, you do. Do you see the distinction here? Yes. That's exactly, Preeti. You're absolutely correct. And this is the beauty of sentence structures, guys. Ashwin says, does inference always have to be what the author states? No, it's the inference has to be what the author agrees with. And what he states is what he agrees with. But if there are other things that the author agrees with, that can also be the inference. For example, if I took this statement, if I say synthetic roads are considered, and I'm going to just do dot 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 over here just so that we call a break over here. Synthetic roads are considered to be crack proof, which I agree. Then you can infer that synthetic roads are crack proof. Why? But the author agree because the author agrees with it. Does that help you, Ashwin? Again, think about it this way. If you are the author who's writing the report and someone else is reading the report, that person should be able to figure out what is it that you agree with and what is it that the information that you're providing for that person to make a judgment with. You should be able to make that distinction. And that's really important. Yes, so the author is saying some people consider this. And by the way, for those of you who watch 24-hour news, you would notice that your news broadcasters very smartly say that X, Y, and Z consider this to be harmful. By doing that, they're taking the blame away from themselves. No one can sue the news channel that they are saying it. At the same time, they are making you think that they are saying it. Okay. So next time you listen to a news, you're going to really find that a lot of times they cite sources. The reason they cite sources is to cover their asses. All right. By unknown sources is our president's favorite line. But yes. So, and that's one way. You can't legally essentially indict that person. Why? Because he said, I'm not saying it, someone else said it, I'm merely the communicator. By a source close to the matter. All right. So with that, let's go to the full length passage over here. And I want to thank Ritvik who says, don't say otherwise you'd be targeted. Yes, thank you for that. I think it's okay to state facts, um, and sometimes you've got to be targeted. Why? Because you have to really state what's out there. So I'm going to give you a full length passage. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to read it, just to read it. There are no questions on it. All right. And then when I present questions, you'll still have the passage as reference. Okay. So 4 minutes from now, I'm going to start presenting the question. All right, it's about time. Let's get started. And so there was this question. It was, will this session be uploaded on YouTube? Yes, it will be. And here is here's the link to it where it will be uploaded when we upload the recording. So you have it, and you've read this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna now change the view. I'm gonna reduce the size of this over here because on the screen on the left or on the pod on the left, it's going to be the same screen. You're going to see the questions. Here is your passage over here. So you guys can refer to the passage and the questions simultaneously. And I hope that you guys are doing this on a tablet at least, if not on a laptop. And then I'm going to put in the poll questions below the passage. Where is my question one? And the question one is over here. I'm going to give you about a minute per question over here. So here's your poll question. And we're going to solve all the questions one by one. Here is question number one. Okay, last 20 seconds, guys. Let's get those responses in. 3, 2, and 1. And we're going to do this GMAT style. So I'm not going to share the results with you guys. I'm going to move on to question number 2 right from it. Let me end the poll. Move over here. And here's question number 2. And then you should now be able to see question number 2. Okay, last 20 seconds, guys. Let's get those responses in. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. And we have 200 responses. That's great. I'm gonna move this over here. Here's the poll for question number 3, and here's your question number 3. Okay, this one is done. Let's get question number 4. I'm going to end the poll. Let's get question number 4 over here. I'm going to present the poll results as question number 4. And you know what I can do? Has something that I can do. I can expand. Just give me 1 second, guys. I want to just rearrange the passage as well as the question. So put them one below the other. And then that allows me to expand the question pane a bit more. And I'm going to start your timing after that, so don't worry about that. So this probably is a much better view. Last 15 seconds, get those answers in. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Let me hide this. Here's the poll for question number 5. And I'm going to show question number 5 right now. Hey guys, I'm going to give you another 30 to 40 seconds to do this now, so that I think this is probably much more legible. Five, four, three, two, and one. Let's end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results over here because this is the last question for the day. Let me hide this, and let me hide this as well. So, and again, thank you very much for the feedback that you gave me during the questions. I have a very big monitor. I have a 28-inch screen that's 1.5 is to 1 aspect ratio, so it's bigger than probably 99% of the screens out there. So I don't get to see these questions overall. So with that, let's get started with our analysis. So how is this passage? You guys actually, for me, when I look at the responses, when I look at how people did based on what I understand, based on what we've done prior to this, I can tell you guys did better than groups have done in the past. So, but I want to kind of figure out what do you think was your experience over here. Okay. The passage was easier. Good. This is a 700 level passage. It's an official passage. It's not an e-GMAT passage. The first two passages were e-GMAT passages over here. So this is something which a 90th percentile guy would start to do really well. Okay, so that's good. That's good. Good kickstart, easier passage. New to this, so this is interesting. Good. Let's kind of start doing this, and we're going to follow whatever we learned in the first part of this exercise over here. We're going to apply that. That's why we chose this passage. Now, you're going to see some familiar things over here. Frazier and Mosteller. Okay, so let's kind of start going into the passage over here. Frazier and Mosteller assert. When you see assert, it's deem. It's something that we did in the last passage. So it's like the author is saying, it's not my opinion. It's FNM's opinion. And when I said FNM, it reminded me of an M&M. So assert that medical research could be improved by moving toward larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. So I pause over here and I say, okay, this is not the author's opinion. This is per FNM, and they say medical research can be better. So better is this by moving towards larger and simpler trials. Now, this is or H&M, by the way. This is something which if you're beginning to do this, if you're just initial part of this, the whiteboard could be huge with regards to you making these notes side by side. All right. Then comes the next word. Currently. Currently means this is the current practice. It's a keyword. Make note of it. Pause and make note. Researchers collect far more background information on patients than is strictly required for their trials, and then he's doing a comparison. He's saying substantially more than hospitals collect. Now, one of the things that's really important over is two keywords. One is required. This is author's opinion. So it says researchers collect far more background information than is strictly required, and substantially more than hospitals collect. This is what the author is providing you as a fact or as opinion. Thereby is a keyword, escalating cost of data collection, storage, and analysis. So there's a consequence of it. There are increased costs. Data collection, storage, analysis. Do I need to go into it? Probably not. But what I need to remember is the costs. All right. you won't be able to see the question. We are doing passage analysis. Then the author goes on to really say, currently, there's too much data collected. That data as a comparison is more than how much hospitals collect, and that the outcome of that is that increased cost. And you can really see how I'm putting notes in over there. Then the author says, although means okay, there's a negative part. You should automatically, your brain should start visualizing this to really say, although means that the author is going to go in some other direction or is going to do something what we call as a defend against weakener. And as you're doing this, you can probably see the integrated nature of GMAT verbal, where I brought in aspects from sentence correction with regards to sentence structure. Now, the defense against weakener or a different direction is something that comes from critical reasoning. Limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts relevant to study. All right. So this could be a negative of data of collecting less data. Okay, you can overlook some facts. F&M content, again, remember this is the author so now brings back F&M over here. That's really important to understand this. Content at such risk, never entirely eliminable, would still be small. So there are two pieces over here. One is that what does this word never entirely eliminable from research mean? What do you infer when you see this in the context of what was said prior to this? The risk is always present. It's inevitable even when you collect a lot more data. So what it's saying is, what F&M says, hey, even when you collect data, the risk is always there. You cannot eliminate that. Okay. Even with that humongous amount of data collection that researchers currently do. It's really important to interpret it in this context. And he says the content at such risk, never entirely eliminable, would still be small. So he says despite less data collection, that risk, is still going to be very small. And that's F&M's contention, not author's contention. Then what is only? Only is a very important keyword. Why is only very important, or just only? Why are they really important keywords? What's okay? It's an exception. Yes. What else? It's an extreme word. Yes. It's a precise piece of information. Now, that's whatever you're saying is correct, but it's not complete. In the context of critical reasoning as well as reading comprehension, the moment you see the word just, you see the word only, what it means is that you're not just getting information about what the statement that includes only tells about, you're also getting a lot of information about something that's not being said. And just to really prove my point, let me just put in a notes pane over here. So when you say this statement, you can really say, okay, one thing is to really say I need to have a score of 760 to get into Harvard. But the other inference is that, hey, if John has 740, right? You can also infer that. Because the word only is a very strong segmentation word. It talks about one point. And always remember this. And the same thing as you say. If the statement says Harvard has the best program for leadership, then what it means is that Kellogg's program for leadership is right. And that's an automatic inference. This is an inference that you can draw from it. And that's really important to know. And that's where in the CR course, we actually talk about these keywords. Only in research on entirely new variables are new treatments are entirely new and unexpected variables likely to arise. Okay, the risk can't be removed. The risk is small, with the exception of specific research where the risk could be larger. Okay, so that's something which is very, very important to understand over here. All right. Now, when you summarize this, you say, hey, what the author is saying is we should actually go towards simpler trials in which we collect less data. And why? Because simpler trials reduce the cost of data collection while increasing the risk a whole lot. So the risk doesn't change a whole lot. Okay. Bhumika says, how would you summarize the importance of just and only? So Bhumika, what I am proposing is that you understand what just and only tell you, so that the moment you see them in a passage, you are able to infer that piece of information right away. This is, think of it as, and again, forgive me for using a technical term. Think of this as some sort of a structure that the moment you see that structure, you infer information out of it. Okay. So Sanath has a really good important is this FNM's view or is this author's view? So the benefits are from the FNM. Why? Because the assertion comes from FNM. Okay, that's a great question. Who has this question? Lohit says, although limiting information could increase the risk that researchers would overlook facts. So this is what the author really says, that, hey, when you start to, that's what the author is saying. He's saying, although when you collect fewer variables, you would think that it would increase the risk. Okay, that's what the author says. But then FNM say that that's not the case. Lohit, does that help? So this part is author. The other part, the justification, is FNM's. And this is something which, if you again go back to that attitude of, if I were to write this report, you would say, I would really say, although when you collect fewer variables, you would think that there would be some things that you missed, but FNM say that this is not the case. Okay. So you're saying, okay, I haven't verified it, but FNM seem to have already done that job, and that's their viewpoint. Then the author says, FNM propose, again, that there's another piece that's coming out. FNM propose that not only that researchers limit data collection on individual patients, but also that researchers enroll more patients in the clinical trial. So I pause myself over here, and you should always look at where I'm pausing, because that's something which is natural to me. When you start doing such passages yourself, you'd get to a point that where you would know where you need to pause. All right. So FNM proposed not only that so there's a proposal that FNM saying, he says, hey, collect less data, and B, increase the size of the trial, and the outcome of that would be that you actually get a more representative sample of the population with disease under study. And then, so this is the outcome of this, again, outcome of doing this proposal. Do FNM say this, or does the author agree with this? I think it's both over here. Then the author says, this is something which the author says. Again, that switching is something that you need to comprehend. Often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. Okay, so currently the study, the way it's done, it only includes patients with the disease in that trial, and it's done under ideal conditions. Okay, and then as a step 2, a treatment which is deemed successful or judged successful. Judged means deemed or considered over here. Under these conditions can be evaluated under normal conditions. So then this part is what the author is saying. This is what the current process today is. This is a factual piece of information that I as an author am presenting to you. Okay. So essentially, when you look at this, the author really says, hey, benefits of a larger trials are being explained, and again, they are from FNM. This is a conclusion of this activity. This is a conclusion of this activity, and this is, as I said, this is both. This is a natural conclusion. That's a great question, Mukul. So it's a natural conclusion of this activity. So when you see the word there, by obtaining, it says this is what's going to happen over there. It's a prediction. It would be counted under inference. I don't think an inference question would ask this just because of the nature of it, because it's stated over here. But if there were an inference question, you could use this portion. You can use the information from this if that's what you're saying. Ire, let's just go to timing in about 20 minutes because I'm going to show the math over there. All right, then let's move forward. Then the author says broadening the range of trial participants. Okay, so we are continuing with that thought. FNM suggests would, again, remember how the author is very careful about stating what his viewpoint is versus what FNM's viewpoint is, would enable researchers to evaluate the treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions and to evaluate its effectiveness. So when you read this part over here, you can actually go two ways in this. One is, if this part, and this is, even though it's not complex English, it's dense inference out of it. So one way to look at it is there are two benefits that would come out of it. One is you get to treatment's efficacy for a diverse set of patients under various conditions. And the second is that you get to different patient subgroups over here. Frankly, when I read this part, I said there are two benefits. That's how I looked at it. I tried to read, okay, what does it mean diverse set of patients under various conditions and patient subgroups? I didn't understand it. But then when I read forward and I said, for example, the author is explaining this, he says, the value of a treatment for a progressive disease may vary according to the stage of the disease. Okay, so I'm going to really map it to different varying various conditions. Stage of the disease is various conditions. Patients' ages may also affect. That for me is subgroups over here. So I say, okay, now I understand what he means by conditions and what he means by subgroups over here. So how many of you are find that, okay, as you did this, this is starting to become A, more clear, and B, it's not super difficult. With practice, you can get used to kind of reading it this way. You're probably not there yet. You probably won't be there tomorrow, but in about 6 days, as you inculcate these habits, you're going to get fairly good at it. Okay, but it requires that deliberation. Okay, so let's kind of look at, it looks okay when I do it. I was a student like you. I had to struggle with both quant and verbal. I wasn't someone who was naturally good at the GMAT. And trust me, I haven't done RC for a very long time myself. So if I can, the reason I'm able to do this is because what I learned from RC, I apply in my regular day-to-day life. Should you time ourselves while practicing these tactics? Absolutely not. This is a skill building exercise. And yes, there's no separate strategy for short and long passages. We'll talk about timing. Okay, so let's look at what's going on in the passage. Guys, let's not go away towards general RC. Once we do that, we're going to forget this passage. So I'm going to clear those questions over here. So in the first paragraph, the author talks about the proposal for simpler trials. All right. And he says, hey, collect less data. It would not, as per FNM, collect less data. There's not much risk. And remember, I've put in the heading as proposal. Okay. And he also talks about what's the current scenario. Then the second proposal that he gives is about larger trial. Why? Because the proposal is that it gets a more representative sample, and it'll give two different benefits, and then the examples are obtained, are given, as well as how it's done today is obtained. Okay. Now let's go to our main point question. But before we do that, someone is asking about pre-thinking. What is pre-thinking? Pre-thinking is before we look at the answer choices, we look at what the answer could be. So when you look at this, we are given a proposal to increase medical research. The benefits then, what are this? The two ways to improve medical research. One is benefits of a simpler trial. The second is benefits of a longer trial. So essentially, my pre-thinking here is I have a two-pronged approach to improve medical research. Those approaches are explained. Okay. Can you see this pre-thinking, and can you really see it's fairly simple to come up with this pre-thinking? Yeah, it's fairly simple. All right. There are two-pronged proposal and to improve medical research, and what those proposals are explained in the passage. So let's look at the various answer choices and figure out which one is correct. So I'm going to now show how you guys polled over here. %54% of you chose choice D, which is the correct answer. So choice A says identifying two practices that may affect the accuracy of trial. The accuracy part is absolutely wrong over here. I would reject it for that. The second part says describing aspects of medical research that tend to drive costs. That's not why the author is doing this. He talks about this, but that's not the reason why he's written the passage. All right. Choice C says evaluating an analysis of certain shortcomings of current medical research practices. All right. The author doesn't talk about he doesn't analyze the current medical practices. He doesn't talk about the pros and cons of that analysis. When you look at this choice, okay, this is a really loaded choice, and it's really important that you understand this. Evaluating an analysis of shortcomings, okay, and the way you look at it is the same way you look at a mathematical problem with BODMAS. Okay, so you really say, does the author talk about certain shortcomings of current medical practices? No. Is there an analysis of those shortcomings? No. Does the author evaluate that analysis itself? He talks about the pros and cons of that analysis? No. All right. This one actually is as far off from the passage as it could get, yet it was the most popular incorrect choice. 43 of you chose this. Choice D, which is the correct answer, he says describing the proposed changes to ways in which clinical trials are conducted. So we talk about proposed changes. That's what FNM are saying. The author describes what those changes are, and these changes are pertaining to how clinical trials are conducted. So everything in this is correct, and which makes this the correct answer. Okay, choice E says explaining how researchers have traditionally conducted trials and how such trials are likely to change. We don't know whether these trials are likely to change over here. That's something which is not there. That's just a proposal. A proposal doesn't mean that that change would is likely to happen. Okay, which makes choice E incorrect. For those of you, I had over 100 folks who made a mistake on this one. Can you guys see why this is correct? Why every other choice is incorrect? All right. Now he describes the proposed changes. That's a good point. Okay. Well, describing the proposed changes, the benefits are a part of the description. Why? Because whenever you propose a change, you justify why that is. So that's the description part of it. Again, look at it from you as a manager. Look at it from you as a manager creating this report for a director. When you describe the changes, you are going to talk about why the justification for those changes. Nitya. And so it still would be the description, but the justification. He didn't define it. He described it. Okay, choice A. Who's this? Prithviraj says, para 2 talks about accuracy of the trials. Okay, para 2, does it talk about accuracy of the trials? Is para 2 about accuracy or is it about efficiency? It's about efficiency. Okay. The current process as per para 2 is a 2-step process, and now you can convert it into a single step process. Okay. Prithviraj, does that help you understand? Okay. So again, let me just go back. I think if you're asking this questions, which is FNC analyze the shortcomings of current medical practices and the author is evaluating their analysis. No, the author is not saying the pros and cons of FNC. Is the author really saying this is where FNC is correct, this is where FNC is incorrect, is wrong? Higher? Is author evaluating FNC? Has the author really said one aspect that FNC failed to look for is this? Has author ever said that? No, he's not said that. He's not evaluating FNC. He's telling what FNC says. Okay. He's describing it. Why is choice C incorrect? Do you know that that's how the trials are likely to change? As an author, if you were writing this report, are you going to really say that this is how the trials are likely to change? I'm certain. No, you don't know that. You're saying this is what FNCS have proposed. How many of you over here are from India? Let's just get in a poll question over here. And which is where news agencies actually use this. How many of you are from India? Yes, no? I'm from India, by the way. But a good chunk of you are from India. Or how many of you are Indians, regardless of whether you are sitting in India right now. So a year and a half ago, there were a ton of proposals, okay, about H-1B, and those proposed in the US Senate, H-1B visa, which I think is interesting to all of you. A ton of news outlets uh, represented those proposals as the likely changes to H-1B. If you guys remember, a year and a half ago, they're saying this is how H-1B was going to change. Okay, those were proposals. If you really are an MBA saying this is what they're proposing, but you say this is how it's going to change, if you add that piece to it, then you are actually going way beyond describing the proposal. Okay, the author never says that, and which is why this part is wrong. The proposals were proposals from some people. The Senate hadn't passed them. The House hadn't passed them. The President had not agreed on them. And which is why none of those proposals have actually become a law till date. So for those of you really saying, there was a question here, is it important to really spend 30 minutes on a passage versus solving 3 passages in 30 minutes? My question to you is, where do you think you'll get more learning? What approach do you think will help you avoid mistakes in the future? Spending 30 minutes on one passage or rushing through 3 to 4 passages in 30 minutes? Which approach do you think? 30 minutes on one passage, yes. And making sure that you don't repeat the mistakes. All right. And I didn't answer that question at that point in time. Why? Because it was going to be very clear which option is going to be, which option is more beneficial once you solve a few questions. Let's look at question number 2. Question number 2 says, which of the following can be inferred from the passage about a study of category of patients referred to in the lines, often researchers restrict participation to have no ailments beside the disease studied. Okay, so what the author is saying is, what can be inferred about those studies? We have to really do the inference about the studies. That's really important, in which only that selected group of patients is there. Okay, so let's kind of look at what can be inferred about those studies over here. Essentially, what we infer about this is, one is that the results of those studies are very limiting, and then it leads to a 2-step process. That's kind of my pre-thinking that I've taken going into the question. Read this. Do you guys agree? Right? Hey, the results are limiting, and then they cover only ideal conditions, and then you have to really evaluate them again. So it's a 2-step process. When you look at the answer choices, choice A clearly is the correct answer, which is what, about half of you have actually selected. Choice B says it'd be prohibitively expensive and in its attempt to create ideal conditions. We don't know anything about the cost of this, so we don't know anything over here. Choice C says it'll be the best way to sample the total population of potential patients. Absolutely opposite. The author really says we should broaden the trial to get a more representative sample. So it's quite the opposite. Choice D, which was very popular, it would allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk that important variables could be overlooked. This is where the test confuses you. That's stated in the first paragraph, not in the context of this. Okay, so the variables piece over here is not discussed in this context at all. And choice E, which not many of you have chosen, its finding would be more accurate if the concerned treatments of progressive versus non-progressive, again, is not in this context at all. and hence the only option that is correct is choice A. And only one can be correct, by the way. All right, everyone's clear on this one? Let me just get a yes no poll over here. Can I repeat why choice D is wrong? You can really say in this context, we are not talking about data collection or overlooking important variables. Okay, that's discussed in the case of making a trial simpler, not focusing on not who to choose in the trial, but the number of variables. Okay, so if this choice is made for people who confuse paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 are two different proposals. Let's look at question 3. Again, it can be inferred from the passage that a study limited to those mentioned in the lines, blah, 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 it's the same set of lines, would have the following advantages over the kind of study proposed by FNM. So this may seem like a very similar question, but it's a very different question, which is the first question was what can you infer about the study? This particular question is what is the advantage of limiting the patients to just that select group of patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. So again, I go back to that part over here. It's kind of the opposite question, and well, I wouldn't say opposite, but it's a very different question. Okay. Now, how do you figure this out? You really say the given way is that you limit the participation under ideal conditions and then evaluate it under normal conditions. The proposed way is to get a greater variety of population, to get a much more representative sample. So when you look at this, you say, okay, let's look at the answer choices. This seems like an inference over a larger scope. Okay, so let's look at each of the answer choices and let's see how you guys polled over here. Let's get the poll responses. This is question number 3. Here are broadcast results. 55% of you actually chose choice C, which is the correct answer. That would limit the number of variables researchers would need to consider when evaluating the treatment under study. The key word over here is evaluating the efficacy of treatment under study. And yes, that's there. Why? Because if you just have patients who are suffering from that particular condition, then you won't have to evaluate the various kinds of patients over there. Okay. Choice A, accuracy is not discussed. Let's look at choice D or E. It would help researchers identify a subgroup of patients. That actually is not correct. When you think about choice D, it's a benefit of enrolling a wider variety of patients, not a limited group. The question is about a limited group. Okay. Experimental treatment for an average patient. I don't know if we're talking about experimental treatments over here, and this one is also completely out of scope. Any doubts on this one before we move forward? Okay. Explain D, it would help identify. This is about the proposed study. This is not the current study. The question is about the current way of doing things. That's why D is actually opposite. The question would have the following advantages. If we restrict study participation to patients who have no other ailments, this is not the proposed way. This is the current way. Choice D refers to the proposed way. Vishwas, does that help you? Okay, good. I can see explain D changing to yes. How can we say limiting variables to be an advantage would have the follow over the kind? It's an advantage because it will limit the number of variables. It's not a benefit, an advantage. The two different terms. So what it's really saying is, when you think about it this way, if you enroll patients who only have that treatment, then it will limit the number of variables researchers have to study while evaluating a treatment. All right. You have to study fewer variables. Why? Because you only are studying those people who have that one disease. So that's an advantage. Where is experimental treatment over here? In the paragraph anywhere? Okay. So the question is, how can we say limiting variables is an advantage? I think you have to, the thing where you're failing is to understand what you're supposed to respond to. Let's just look at this. Let's say you go to, there are two ways to go to office. Okay, one is you walk. The second is you drive. Which way, assuming you're not in Bangalore, which way do you think is faster? Drive, right? Drive is faster. Now, but does number one, which is walking, not have the advantage that you don't need to purchase gasoline? Does one not have the advantage that you don't need to purchase gasoline? It does, right? Yes, it does. In the same way, if you consider a study with limited variables, it has the advantage that yes, you have to really study fewer variables. Right? You've got to understand what the question is asking. Okay, is that clear? How can one have an advantage? Yes, it's an advantage, yes. In the same way, 15 years ago, when people were making a case, 15 years ago, we're talking about the world of BlackBerry, okay? When people were making a case, hey, BlackBerry gets you an email on mobile. And Nokia said, when Nokia was still the king of cell phones, they said, but with our phones, you get an actual Outlook client, which means you can see more things. That has an advantage. Our phones, they were clunky when it comes to the email client, but the advantage was that you can get more information. Was that an advantage? Yes. Was that an overall benefit with regards to being more efficient? No. And again, that's where you have to understand the difference between an advantage, which is just a particular aspect, to the benefit, which is a more overall thing. Okay. Let's move forward. Let's go to question number 4. Let me show the poll results. Poll results, 60% of you did it correctly. Ritvik says this is a good way to compare the options with real life situations. When you are confused, do that. It will lead you to that level of understanding. Okay. See, then the question 4 says the author mentions patients' ages in the line. Patients' ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy, primarily in order to. Let's kind of do our pre-thinking over here. So that's towards the end. And remember, we actually did this, which is effectiveness for different patient subgroups. That's what we kind of looked at this. Can I vertically expand? Yes, I can vertically expand the poll over here. How about now? I can move this up there as well. Okay. So the author mentions patients' ages in context of the aspects that could affect the efficacy of the treatment in real life situations and how essentially the FNM's methodology proposal would address the same. Let's go to choices over here, and this is what it is, enrolling something which a point about the value of enrolling a wide variety of patients. 60% of you got it right. So I'm going to quickly go through this. I'm going to focus primarily on on the incorrect answer choices. Progressive diseases indicate why progressive diseases may require different treatments at different stages. No, we are not looking at why they require. That aspect is not mentioned at all. Okay, that why piece is not mentioned at all. It's absolutely wrong. If you're thinking that, then you're inferring incorrectly. And the author is just saying, hey, progressive diseases may require different treatments, not in this context, but in another context. But even in the context that he says, he doesn't really say why that's the case. He does, and just to really tell you an example of why that's the case, if you really say, hey, this is a stage 3 cancer, it's a progressive disease, it requires different treatment. Why? Because, a part of the lung is already consumed. The author doesn't explain that why there. And so even if we were talking about this particular context, this would not be a correct detail or an inference response. Choice C was the only one that was popular, and you can really see the other ones. Let's go to choice E very quickly. Let's see the poll results for choice E. Here are the poll results. This is actually the answer, the question that most of you made a mistake on. Okay, and this is, in my opinion, fairly simple, probably the easiest ones. It's a detailed question. The author says, the question says, according to the passage, which one of the following is a result? A result is an outcome of the way in which researchers generally conduct clinical trials. All right. So which is an outcome of that? There are two things which are mentioned with this. One is that researchers, paragraph 1, researchers collect a lot more data than required. Consequently, they spend money on things which are useless. The second is, in the second paragraph, these trials are only conducted under ideal conditions. So real life application in the first step is limited. How many of you, can see this pre-thinking and say, okay, I understand this? How many of you can say, okay, I understand this part over here? Just the first bit. The second part is also there. They're both the results of this. Okay. Now, choice A is the correct answer. All right. Which is that they spend resources on storage of information that's likely to be irrelevant to the study. If you're collecting more information than is required, then you're going to spend resources on storage of information that's likely to be irrelevant. Let's look at choice B. Why is choice B wrong? Choice B says they sometimes compromise accuracy of their findings by collecting and analyzing more information than is strictly required. We don't discuss accuracy. In fact, we don't really say they collect more information, and by doing that, that accuracy is there. Okay, so accuracy is not discussed. Choice C, which is really tempting, is they avoid the risk of overlooking variables by collecting more data. Do they avoid? The author really says that such risk is not completely avoidable. Okay, remember that the author said such risk while not completely avoidable or eliminable. So they can't avoid. The risk exists. Okay, how do we know that the information is likely to be irrelevant? Let's kind of go over here. You see this part over here? Currently researchers then is strictly required for their trials. Do you see this part over here? Do you see this? Rashmi. Yeah, more than required means it's irrelevant, right? It's irrelevant if it's more than required. If it's not required, it's irrelevant. And it's likely to be irrelevant, by the way. Okay. Let's look at this. Ashish says they avoid doesn't mean isn't there. No, they avoid means that they actually avoid. If they aim to avoid, if that were there, then it would have been their point of view, Ashish. Do you understand the difference? They avoid means they actually end up avoiding. It's the outcome. They aim to avoid is their point of view. Think of it. They avoid any bugs by testing it comprehensively means that the bugs are not there. They aim to avoid any bugs. It means that their goal is to avoid. Whether the bugs actually are avoided is something that you don't know. They're very different things. If you as a manager say they avoid bugs by doing this, you are making a claim that the outcome is that there are no bugs. Ashish, do you understand the difference again? Yes. And again, choice D and E over here are irrelevant. So let's kind of talk about this. As you read the passage, it's really important to read it properly to understand those linkages, because without those linkages, you will not be able to get that. Okay. You'll not be able to answer these questions. Very few of you got all of these correct, and which is why this is a 700 level passage. The passage itself was not difficult, but the understanding the linkages, understanding the purpose of each and every sentence was important, except where there were details. Okay, and it's really important that that you master the method to get to that. Why? Because you need to get higher GMAT scores, especially if you're applying for round 1 and round 2 next year. Now, to get to that 90th percentile, you need to master the method of reading slowly. Read one passage every day. Read one article on The Economist, but read slowly. And I like to say read a passage rather than reading an article, because on the e-GMAT course, you have over 140 passages which are made by us, plus about 100 official passages which are there with their explanations. The reason why we say that is because we tell you how to read the passage, what you should infer from every line. Okay. And if you do this, you're going to find you improve within a week. Now, some of you really have been talking about, hey, read slowly in a time test. How does that work? And really, if you look at timing concerns with regards to GMAT, the way people think about timing is essentially they say, okay, I'm going to read the passage in 2 minutes. Give me about a minute and a half to answer 4 questions. I'm going to take about 8 minutes to get through the passage. How many of you do this? You do. That's the wrong way of thinking. The way you should think is slowly read initially. Why? Because if you don't read slowly initially, there is no way you can understand these nuances. If you can't understand these nuances, there is no way you're going to be able to answer questions correctly. Okay. For an average passage, for most passages, you're going to spend 3 minutes reading the passage and spend a minute answering questions. That's what you will need if you read the passage properly. For difficult passages, you're going to spend 4 minutes. By the way, the beauty about difficult passages is that you're going to find that answering questions is a lot easier, especially if you comprehend this. Sometimes if you have lengthy answer choices, how will we complete it in a minute? As you notice, the moment you read the first 4 words of answer choices, you're going to figure out, oh, the passage doesn't talk about this, so this can't be correct. Mark it off and go away. You don't even need to read those answer choices completely. But how can you get to that judgment? The only way you can get to that judgment, or there are 2 things you need to do to get to that judgment. 1, understand and comprehend the passage, and 2, understand how do you read the answer choice, which, by the way, both of them lead to the same skill. Is it okay to make notes while reading it? It won't consume more time in the exam. It won't. So here is what's going to happen. And I see this question, and I hate to see it. Why? Because of the advice that experts who've been naturally good at this give. A lot of experts who are naturally good at this, who never had to learn, will tell you don't make notes during the passage while reading. And that advice is okay if you're naturally good and if the passage is the passage of your choice. If you're not naturally good, the way you would start is you would start with making notes. Why? Because your brain's not used to comprehending information. As you start making notes, as you solve 30 passages while making notes, what you're going to find is that your brain will automatically tell you when to make notes, and the need to make notes would go down tremendously. I mean, remember the time you learned how to drive, or if anyone's ever learned how to actually run a marathon or how to lift weights, they would have gone through this experience. When you're learning how to drive, you need to focus on each and every aspect of driving. Your mental faculties need to be completely involved in it. And so this is equivalent of taking notes. But once you learn how to drive, you don't need to. You can actually use your mental faculties to get dressed up, to take a phone call, to attend a meeting, and so on and so forth. Similarly, when I started lifting weights, my mental faculties were completely engaged with what my posture is going to be. How am I going to kind of stay upright while actually doing curls, or while doing any other exercise. Or when I started to run, I had to be very conscious of how my body was lifting my weight. But once you start doing that, it becomes the default way. Does that help with regards to should you take notes or not? If your brain's telling you to take notes, take notes. And as you take notes, that need to take notes will come down. If initially you're going to need 7 minutes to read a passage properly, that's fine. Do that. Do that. Remember the first time you were driving, people were driving at 80, 90, and you on the highway, you were still at 45, 50 or 60 for that matter. And was that bad? No. Your body, your brain was getting used to the cars around you, and that's okay. The key thing is to talk about to move forward, not to stay still. If you're staying still, if you're not improving, as with every 5 passages that you're solving, that's when you have a problem. Again, if you comprehend the passage, you won't need more than a minute. That's something that we've seen again and again and again. I'm going to share some examples with you. Here's an example of a student called Anastasia. She said you should read all the text, not just the first and the last sentence. As you understand the whole paragraph, it only takes 30 to 50 seconds to answer each question. All right. Um, and she says, I read all the official passages, bought a subscription for The Economist. Each article I tried to assess from different points of view, which is what we talked about. He said, read to understand, analyze each part of the information and why it's given. There's a reason why each and every part is given, and read with the SC hat in mind. Nishant, who actually would be talking about his experience at Columbia and how he got into Columbia on Monday, says, what you have to realize is that you have enough time to cover all the questions. Don't stress about timing. Take 3+ minutes to read and understand and comprehend a passage. And again, we talked about this over here. This strategy has that initial investment of time, but it's great when you deal with questions. The beauty of this is it's not about timing. It's about what I call as total productive time, which is the percentage of time you spend to answer questions correctly. And you're going to find that your total productive time is going to be much higher as you do this. Okay, this is Nishant's ESR, by the way. And you can get this. Here's a student who got into Kellogg who's being interviewed by MIT right now. He said before applying and reading strategies, he had a V27, and he says, I was forced to read the passage multiple times because he didn't understand it for the first time around. After applying reading strategies, he got to 94th percentile, and the need to read the passage again went down significantly. So how does a 90th percentile prepare for reading comprehension? Strategically pause, read from the point of view of the author. How do you learn how to strategically pause? This is the master comprehension course that gives you the core basics for it, in which we talk about how a sentence is formed, how do you actually deconstruct a long sentence, and we evaluate you on each of these. That gives you those building blocks over there. Then we tell you where do you pause, and again we evaluate you on that as well. And then we teach you how to read in within the RC course with reading strategies, concepts, and practice files over there. Make sure you do that. Make sure you apply this, and then make sure you learn the concepts that are there. We already talked about the fact that, hey, more than 30 minutes analyzing a passage. How many of you have spent more than 30 minutes on the main point practice file, analyzing your mistakes? How many of you have done that? More than 30 minutes on the main point concept file one, which is a part of your free trial. If you haven't, do it. You're going to get insights. You're going to be better. So make sure you understand the concepts that are tested. Make sure you spend time on those concepts. Once you spend time on those concepts, answering RC passages would become a lot easier. I won't say it will be a cakewalk. It will become much easier. Why? Because you'll have the right tools over there. And when you get in there, you go through these application files, you're going to find that your accuracy is much higher. And when you make a mistake, you understand why you made a mistake and you don't repeat that mistake. Okay. Let's move forward. And then you go about cementing methods using Scholaranium. This is what Rohit did in his thing, and you can really see his average time correct and average time incorrect. This includes the time needed to read the passage. One of the other things that you would really see is when you don't understand a question, that's where you spend a lot more time. The question that you get, you don't spend a ton of time on it. Follow these reading strategies, and then How many of you need help creating a study plan? For those of you who need help creating a study plan, use the GMAT Planner tool if you're an e-GMAT student. Um, if you're not an e-GMAT student, you should we can help you create your study plan. Why? Because it can tell you how long it will take for you to ace RC, to ace CR, to ace quant over here, and you'll see the URL come up in the Q&A pod right away. With that, I'm gonna thank you guys for joining me today. I will now take on the questions that are there, but let me share the session PDF with you. Here is a session PDF that that you guys can download. Okay. And if you want to see some of these success stories, you can read their debriefs over there, over here, and you can also watch their video interviews over here. So just click on this and click on browse to over here. URL for the study plan over here. Here is the URL for study plan. Is GMAT Planner available for free trial users? Through this URL, you can go to the GMAT Planner for free trial users. We take sessions every weekend. So we have a quant workshop tomorrow. We actually have a session this Monday in which Nishant, who we talked about in this webinar, is going to talk about how did he get into Columbia. So it's briefly he'll talk about his GMAT preparation, but then he's going to focus primarily on his application. So GMAT's one part of the story, the application is the other part. So here's the link to register for Quant Workshop. If you've not registered for it, you should be able to click on the link and register for Quant Workshop over here. And then on Monday, you can click on this link and Nishant is going to talk about how did he get into Columbia and how did he tackle low GPA and an unconventional work X. Some of you have been talking about unconventional work X. Over here, he'll talk about this. All right. Is Columbia biased towards the GMAT than GRE? Most business schools, despite what they say, they for scholarships they prefer the GMAT than the GRE. They only give out their GMAT scores as summaries. If you think about it, they don't. Very few schools, about 1% of schools, talk about an average GRE score. Is there a way to categorize if the author is evaluating, describing? Yes, evaluating means talking about pros and cons. Describing means showing how something is. So that's how you would categorize evaluating versus describing. And there's a list of keywords that that you guys can really look at over here. Here is a list of keywords that are there. That you guys can look at. What's a good score for a fellowship program? I would say you start into that fellowship area when you actually have 30 points more than the median score. And to know more about scholarships and fellowships, you can look at a few of these success stories over here. These are just a few, and a few more. For increasing reading comprehension, will it matter what source you select among Economist, Wall Street Journal, or New York Times? I would select The Economist. How many RC questions would be there? About 12. Do you have a session on which schools uh, suit whom? Not exactly that. That's a very wide scoped session. But we have all of these YouTube live webinars where we have folks from Harvard, Stanford, and a bunch of other schools that we talk about. So let me get to Okay, here are a bunch of uh, success stories with regards to these are unedited success stories. You can really see where did these guys go into. Mukul says, I'm an entrepreneur, I completed my BTech, I'm running my own startup for the last 3 years. Yes. Can I write my experiences 3 years or will it? No, it won't. So, Mukul, the question really is if you've made money, if you've made decent amount of money, then it will count as experience. Especially if one of the recommenders would be one of your customers who explains how you've been able to get substantial benefit or provide substantial value. So you may have a very unique application, and that may be an advantage. How many 700 level questions can come in RC? That's actually a wrong question to ask. Depends on how well you're doing. If you're doing really well, 9 out of those 12 questions might be 700 level. Okay. So, all right. How about reading passage from aeon.co? I have not used that source, so I can't really comment on it. So sorry. Any advice for deferred MBA programs? Nikhil, you have to tell me a bit more about deferred MBA programs as to what your question is. And GMAT whiteboard, how much of a problem would the whiteboard be? I don't think, frankly, it's going to be a problem for 90% of the questions. I'm going to really share this playlist with you, and you can see how we've solved questions using the whiteboard. You can see that. Program structure, timing, and fee. You can write to rajat@gmat.com and we can help you with that. The program structure, you can actually read a lot about it on our webpage, or rather most of it on our webpage, frankly. But if you still have questions, you can always write to me. So over here, let's look at this. Mukul says, I have income tax returns and I have recommendations from professors of B schools. The professors, Mukul, these professors, did they actually work with you? Do they have any work ex? If you really, again, look at some of the videos that we talk about, or some of the videos that are there on our YouTube channel, to tell you who should you choose as your recommender. It's really important that you look at that. What's the best source of RC English to improve reading ability? Just go through the RC course, Jatin, and practice while using reading strategies. Deferred MBA programs. Does the score need to be more impressive as we don't have work experience? If you don't have any work experience, don't go for an MBA, please. Get work experience. The score won't matter a whole lot at good programs then. Good MBA programs. Okay, so yes, score won't matter for good MBA programs. If you don't have work experience, you have a GMAT score, apply for master's programs, not an MBA. Okay. Masters of Management and a bunch of them. When we talk about The Economist, is it The Economist GMAT course? No, it's not The Economist GMAT course. It's The Economist magazine. Those are two very different things. Do we have a breakdown of number of CRs, SC and RC? So about 14 SC, 10 CR, and about 12 RCs is what we typically see. Now this number could vary by 1 or 2. What would be a good score for a fresher to get into a decent B school? I actually don't advise that a fresher should get into a B school, so I will not um, entertain that question either. If you're a fresher, you want to get into a B school, you probably are looking at Indian B schools, the IIMs and all. Most, I mean, trust me, it's not. I've seen just so many people do a second MBA just because they did their first MBA as a fresher, and 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 uh, and they kind of realize that they've wasted the opportunity. I would very strongly recommend that you find a job. One thing that I would really say is, if you're not good enough to get a job, you probably shouldn't do an MBA. And again, trust me, the more people who do an MBA, the greater benefit it is to my company. But at the same time, we don't consider our job just to sell GMAT courses. Our goal is to help you get into to the right step. Our goal is to change life. Okay, making dreams. We want to make dreams possible. We want to change lives. And trust me, if you don't have any work experience, you've never worked professionally, and if you go in for an MBA, your life will not be changed. Is an MIM worth it? Yes. Yes, an MIM is worth it. And again, if you want to, we do publish a lot about MBA MIM programs. So you can really look at some of the top MBA programs. These are great programs. If you participate in Toastmasters, will it help in building your profile? If you have a leadership position that makes a significant impact in Toastmasters, it will. If you don't, then Toastmasters will only help you get better at interviewing or get better at expressing yourselves. So not directly, but indirectly, it could be a huge gain. Again, the Economist articles. Okay, just want to make sure I put that in writing. Yes, MIM does call for GMAT as a part of their application. Number of problem solving and data sufficiency, 50-50%. So 16 and 15. Is there a video on pros and cons of a 1-year MBA versus a 2-year US MBA? That's I can really tell you. Here is, we've written a blog article. We probably will write a video on that as well. So here is a video as a blog article. How long should I study to get a 24 in verbal at least if I have an 18 in my mocks? Uh, I can answer the question, how long can you get how long would it take for you to go from an 18 to a 34? Because that's really some tangible improvement, and 18 to 24 is still in that zone of uncertainty. But again, if you schedule a session with us on using the PSP tool, we'd be able to help you with that. So yeah. So again, so that's what I would say. J3 says, I have 13 years of work experience. Is it wise to quit my job and pursue full-time MBA? J3, depends on what you want. If you want to continue with your career, I would recommend do an executive MBA. If you want to change your career, definitely do a full-time MBA. Full-time MBA is for career changers. And so that's kind of what I look at it. The second thing is it going to be beneficial from a monetary standpoint? It depends on what you're making right now, but a lot of people, who are making a lot of money in their current jobs, they do an MBA not because it will help them make more money, but it'll help them um, give satisfaction. They might end up making more money, but that more money would be because of would be an outcome of satisfaction or fulfillment that they get. So I think, should you do an MBA? If you're asking that question, then I think that's a question that's very personal. You need to ask yourself that question. Why is it that you need to do an MBA? When I did an MBA, it wasn't to make more money. It was a natural outcome that happened. Okay. In a way that the reason I work out today is not because I want big muscles. The reason I work out today is because I want to be healthier. And being more muscular is a natural outcome. But 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 that's not why I work out. If there were an alternate way to making my heart healthy, to making my life better, I would do it rather than working out. Okay. So in the same way, the reason why, if you have 12 years of experience, you should do an MBA is not to make more money, but to make your life more fulfilling. Okay. Now, an outcome of that will be that you make a lot more money. Would 7 years of work experience lead to difficulty? No, it won't. Again, one of the things that I want to make sure you understand if you're going for an MBA in Europe or in the US is it's very different from an MBA in India. And in India, an MBA in one aspect, and let me explain, in one aspect, is very similar to an engineering degree. You do an MBA, you go through campus placements, you do not learn how to hunt for a job. When it comes to the US and the Europe, an MBA is supposed to be a journey in which you discover yourself. An MBA also teaches you how to hunt for a job. You go on hunting tours and visit various companies. You position your candidacy. Companies don't come with saying, "Oh, we are here to hire 20 candidates." No, that doesn't happen. They are here to talk to you. If you make a good enough case over the course of 5 meetings, they will consider you for a position that is going to open in their company. So you learn how to hunt. And that skill, in my opinion, is an invaluable skill. Why? Because once you learn how to hunt, you will never stay hungry. Is it advantages or disadvantages in regards to your application to apply for an MBA after masters in engineering and some work experience? It depends on what you do with that masters. I mean, I did that, and it was an advantage. Why? Because my masters in engineering degree allowed me to do some really good work, and because I did some really good work, I was able to 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 write really good essays, which helped me get a full fellowship. The best online MBA program. There are many good online MBA programs. Depends on what you want to really do. So, Keenan Flagler, for example, has a really good online MBA program. They've been investing in it for very long. Harvard and Stanford are now investing in their online MBA program. So, 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 but this is something which is changing every day. So it depends on where you want to be. If you want leadership and online MBA, I think Stanford and Harvard would be better than Keenan Flagler. If you were focused on marketing and a few other things, Keenan Flagler would be good. Okay, guys, a bunch of these questions are about, are more suited for admission consultants. I have good answers to them, but providing good answers would require knowing a bit more about your needs. So let's focus on just the GMAT. I'm going to answer one question. What's the difference between an MBA and an executive MBA? It depends on where you do this. In the US, an MBA is for someone who doesn't have business education as a fundamental piece, and 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 then chooses to actually get the basics of business and does go through a career change. An executive MBA is for an executive who's already in a leadership position but needs to increase his or her knowledge only of certain aspects of business and as a career progression. So an executive MBA in the US is typically part-time. It's typically company sponsored, or if you're a startup, then your boss has to sign off on saying that you are okay to do an executive MBA while working full time. An executive MBA in India is an MBA for experienced professionals. People do that MBA as a career change. They do it just like the full-time MBA. It's just a rebranding of a full-time MBA where in the class you have people who have a ton of experience. So in India, I call the executive MBA is an abused full-time MBA, which, by the way, what the full-time MBA should have been in the first place. Andrews, does that help you? Okay. With that, I will like to end this webinar. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I know there are lots and lots of questions, guys. Um, you know, send those questions to me. I forward those questions to the admission consultants who work with us. If you're an e-GMAT student, we would help to get good answers for you. But again, as e-GMAT, we exist to help you ace the GMAT. We don't exist to help you write to build an amazing application. It's something that we can't do at scale. Why? Because we get 10,000 students a year, 10,000 paying students a year. So it's very difficult for us to do it at scale. So we've chosen not to do this. And the way we help you is by writing blog articles. So if you have questions, if you send them to us, we'll be happy to share blog articles with you. If we don't have those articles, we'll put them in our pipeline. We'll reach out to our student body who's already there at top B schools to get good answers. And again, connect with us on LinkedIn, connect with us on YouTube, and you get a lot of these answers in in essentially your LinkedIn wall or your YouTube feed. Okay. Thank you very much and have a good day.